This is what you need to do in order to stop your fear, shame, and self-doubt from defining the life you lead and the way you see yourself. My name's Hazel Gale. I'm a former therapist turned author and creator of the fantasy mental health game Betwixt. And this video is part of a short series that I'm currently posting about the mechanics of self-sabotage and the role played in this by the core emotion of fear. Everyone knows that when you run from something, it only gets scarier. Be it from the monster in your dream or from your little sister as she chases you up the stairs, fleeing is absolutely terrifying. And yet many of us live our entire lives this way. Through no fault of our own, we absorb messages about ourselves and the world from the moment we're able to perceive. Some of these messages are positive and affirming, and some are frightening. They make us feel small or incapable or alone. And because our minds are geared up to protect us at all times, and because it feels safer to always keep one eye on the things that are dangerous, it's natural to cling to these negative beliefs, to keep them in view lest we forget about the threat and walk straight back into the old fire. But in living this way, we make our lives about these ideas. We let them define us and limit us. We may feel like we're doing all we can to run from our shame, to disprove our self-doubt, to achieve so much that the old fears couldn't possibly feel true any longer. But what we actually do by living in this way is breathe life into our fears. We make them feel like reality. But running from our fears is not the only way to move through life. And it's not the only way to feel motivated either. We can head in exactly the same direction, moving towards what we want rather than away from what we don't. And when we do, the experience of both the journey and the results at the end can be vastly different. The person whose limiting belief is driving their behaviour is living an away from life, a life of fear, or reaction to the stick. In this mode, they're unable to see the positive aspects of their personality or of the world around them all that clearly, because they're too busy checking over their shoulder to see how close the monster has crept. Although it might seem risky at first, it's only by ceasing to check for that monster that we get to actually feel safer, stronger, and more successful. If you've watched the previous videos in this series, you'll remember that this roller coaster graph represents the oscillation between almost feeling successful and accomplished before self-sabotaging and sinking straight back down into the all too familiar sense of failure, which resets the cycle of resistance and attempting to prove ourselves by striving again, only to self-sabotage once more, etc. This is what we tend to get, in other words, if we live an away from existence, focused on our self-doubt and shame. The darker line represents the possibility of continued growth, opened up by switching to a towards existence, where we focus not on the stick, but on the carrot. So how do we make this change? Well, one of the best ways to drag our attention away from the threat of failure or humiliation or whatever it is we're afraid of, is to work on developing a growth mindset. This allows us to live a towards existence, where we can always feel as though we're achieving just as long as we're learning. With a growth mindset, the very concept of failure is negated. Now, any experience which causes us to grow can be deemed a success, no matter the outcome. And the freedom of this perspective allows us to stop checking over our shoulders for the monsters of our minds. This holy grail of an outlook can come from a simple yet powerful change in your self-image. Think of the difference like this. When driven into a fixed mindset, that's the opposite of a growth mindset, by fear and limiting beliefs, we wind up operating from a position of, I'm not enough right now, but if I could just achieve X, then I'll be okay. X might be a certain car or a dress size or a qualification, but of course it never does what we want it to, because as soon as we achieve X, we're already thinking about Y and Z. When operating from a position of I'm not enough, there will simply always be something else that we think we need before we'll allow ourselves to feel enough. Enough will only ever exist in the future. On the other hand, when we operate from a position of self-acceptance, the concepts of both challenge and achievement change entirely. I am enough as it is, and so this next thing is just an added bonus. Suddenly, difficulty itself, challenge, becomes exciting. And it can draw us in rather than frighten us off, meaning that without even trying, we'll do more and grow bigger and go further than we would have done otherwise. And we'll be able to enjoy ourselves along the way too. Of course, I'm not saying there won't be ups and downs, but with a growth-oriented outlook, each bad day provides information about how to be better in the future. The difference is that when progress is your focus, then no lull in your life is likely to be as low as the one before, because you're always learning. Now, there are thousands of articles and videos out there that share tips for developing a growth mindset, and I'm not going to go into detail about it here because what I find more interesting and important is the connection between a fixed mindset and fearful limiting beliefs, which is less often spoken about. The fixed mindset, that is the belief in innate talent, fuels and sustains the fear-focused away from existence we get when clinging to our limiting self-beliefs. The two things are not the same exactly, but they make for really formidable bed buddies. And this means that the single most important thing we need to do to adopt a super powerful, big picture, growth-minded outlook is really quite simple. It's to stop running away from our fears. It's to train ourselves to get okay with things not going to plan, to get real about our fears and flaws alike. It's to stop, turn around, and venture back into the shadow, to meet, know, and embrace the failure monster, because the moment you do that, you will realize that it was never that scary in the first place. The truth is that it really doesn't actually matter that much if you fail the odd exam or lose in the final or make a fool of yourself in front of somebody important. These painful, humbling moments are always fleeting, and they do not define us as individuals. They say nothing of who we are or our fundamental worth. What's more, when you embrace these moments, they'll allow you to glimpse your own shadow, to bit by bit shine a light on the parts of yourself that you're otherwise unable to see. And some of those parts will play a key role in whatever comes next for you. Ultimately, there is so much more to you than the results you get. And people go further anyway when they can disconnect objective failure from their sense of identity and consequently allow themselves to enjoy challenges for how they actually always make us better. In a nutshell, I would say that we need to remember something very, very simple, and that's that the opposite of good enough isn't perfect. In order to avoid not good enough, we do not have to achieve perfection. Just let that sink in for a moment. Good enough is not the same thing as perfect. What's more, very often it's our attempt to achieve perfection that winds up making us feel less than enough. As always, I really hope this helps. If so, please like and share the video so others can find it. And if you would like to take an epic journey through a magical world in the name of personal growth, then you can download Betwixt the Mental Health Game, which is available on the iOS App Store and Google Play.